There is something most people misunderstand about evil. They think the devil speaks with thunder, with a terrifying voice, with obvious darkness that anyone can recognize. But that is not how it works. The most dangerous voice in your life is the one you don't even realize you are listening to, because the voice of the devil does not always scream. Sometimes it whispers. It sounds calm. It sounds logical. It sounds like your own thoughts. And that is why millions of people are slowly being led in the wrong direction, without even noticing it. The devil does not begin by destroying your life overnight. No, he begins by planting a small idea inside your mind. A thought that feels harmless. A thought like, just this once won't hurt. Everyone else is doing it. You deserve it. No one will ever know. And before you realize what is happening, that whisper becomes a habit. That habit becomes a path. And that path slowly pulls you away from the life you were meant to live. Many people believe they would recognize evil immediately. But the truth is much more unsettling. The devil's voice often sounds like comfort in the moment and destruction later. Tonight, you are going to understand something that most people never realize until it is too late. You are going to hear what that voice really sounds like. And once you recognize it, you will never hear your thoughts the same way again. Because some of the thoughts you trust the most may not actually be yours. Listen carefully, because the first voice we must expose is the voice that tells you to slowly walk away from your purpose. And this is where everything begins. The voice that sounds like logic. The first way the devil speaks to people is through something that feels completely reasonable, not evil, not dangerous, just logical. It begins during moments when you are tired, discouraged, or frustrated with life. You tried to improve yourself. You tried to stay disciplined. You tried to move closer to your purpose. But then something went wrong, and suddenly a voice appears inside your mind saying, "Why are you even trying so hard? It's not worth it. You're already behind everyone else. You should just take it easy." At first, it sounds like advice, almost like relief, because discipline is hard, growth is uncomfortable, change requires sacrifice, and the devil understands something about human nature. If he can convince you to stop trying, he doesn't need to destroy you. You will slowly destroy your own future. That voice will begin guiding your decisions. Instead of waking up early, you sleep longer. Instead of working toward your goals, you distract yourself. Instead of strengthening your mind, you feed your weakness. And the terrifying part is, it all feels justified. That is how the voice works. It doesn't say, ruin your life. It says, relax today, start tomorrow. You deserve a break. But tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes next year. The voice that slowly convinces you to abandon your potential is one of the most dangerous voices you will ever hear. But that is only the beginning, because the next voice is even more deceptive. It is the voice that makes sin feel normal, and almost everyone hears it every single day. The voice that makes wrong feel normal. There is a second way the devil speaks, and this one is extremely powerful, because it doesn't attack you directly. Instead, it changes what feels normal. You see, human beings are strongly influenced by what they believe everyone else is doing. So the devil plants a thought that sounds like this: it's not that serious. Everyone lives like this. You're overthinking it. This is just how the world works now. And slowly, your standards begin to change. Things that once felt wrong start feeling acceptable. Then eventually, they start feeling normal. This is how many people lose their moral compass without even realizing it. Not because they woke up one day and decided to walk into darkness, but because the voice convinced them that darkness was simply modern life. And the most dangerous part of this voice is that it removes guilt, because guilt is often the alarm system of the soul. When people ignore that alarm long enough, they stop hearing it completely. At that point, the devil no longer needs to whisper. The person is already walking exactly where he wants them to go. This is why so many people feel empty today. They have everything they thought they wanted, Yet something inside feels broken. They listen to a voice that promised freedom, but delivered emptiness. And here is the truth most people never realize. The devil's voice always sounds good in the beginning, but it always leads somewhere dark in the end. But there is another voice that is even more dangerous than this one. A voice that convinces you that you are not strong enough, not worthy enough, and not chosen for something greater. And that voice has destroyed more destinies than almost anything else. The voice that says you're not enough. There is another voice that many people hear, but very few recognize. This voice does not tempt you with pleasure. It does not try to make sin look exciting. Instead, it attacks something much deeper, your identity. This is the voice that appears when you start getting close to something meaningful in your life, when you begin improving yourself, when you begin changing your habits, when you begin stepping into your purpose. That is when the whisper shows up, quiet but sharp. You're not ready. You're not smart enough. People like you don't succeed. You will fail anyway. At first, it sounds like self-doubt, like insecurity. But the truth is, this voice is designed to stop you before you even begin. Because if you never take the step, you will never discover what you are capable of becoming. Many people think failure is what destroys dreams, but that is not true. Most dreams are destroyed by hesitation, and hesitation is often created by this voice. It reminds you of your past mistakes. It brings back memories of when you failed before. It makes you compare yourself to others who seem ahead of you, and slowly, your confidence begins to shrink, until one day, you decide not to try at all. That moment right there is exactly what the enemy wanted, because the devil understands something powerful. A person who believes in their purpose is extremely difficult to control, but a person who doubts themselves can be stopped by their own thoughts. And this voice becomes even more dangerous when it repeats long enough, because eventually you stop questioning it. You begin to believe it. You start saying things like, maybe this just isn't for me. Maybe I should stay where I am. Maybe I'm not meant for more. But listen carefully. The voice that tries to convince you that you are small often appears right before a major breakthrough in your life. That is not a coincidence. It is a strategy. Because if you truly understood your potential, you would move differently. You would think differently. You would refuse to stay stuck. And that is exactly what the enemy fears. But there is another voice, one that has trapped millions of people in a cycle they can't escape. A voice that keeps people addicted to things they know are destroying them. And once you hear how it works, you will begin to notice it everywhere. The voice that keeps you stuck. There is a voice that doesn't just tempt people once. It traps them. This voice is patient. It knows that if it can keep you repeating the same mistake long enough, eventually you will believe you cannot change. And this is how strongholds begin. At first it sounds like a simple suggestion. Just one more time. You can stop whenever you want. It's not that big of a deal. And people listen, not realizing that every repetition strengthens the habit. Every time they give in, the voice becomes louder, until eventually it changes its strategy. It stops sounding like temptation and starts sounding like identity. This is just who you are. You've always been like this. You can't change now. And that is when many people lose hope. Because when a behavior becomes part of someone's identity, escaping it feels impossible. But this is exactly how the enemy operates. He doesn't just want you to fall once. He wants you to believe that getting back up is no longer possible. So he fills your mind with thoughts like, what's the point of trying again? You already messed up too many times. You're too far gone. And people begin to believe the lie. But the truth is something most people don't realize. The devil's greatest weapon is not temptation. It is discouragement. Because when a person loses hope, they stop fighting. And when they stop fighting, they slowly surrender control of their life. But there is another voice that is even more subtle than all of these. A voice that doesn't sound negative at all. In fact, it sounds positive, encouraging, comforting. But behind it, there is a hidden trap. And many people never realize it until it's too late. The voice that sounds like comfort, one of the most deceptive voices you will ever hear, is the voice that makes you feel comfortable staying the same. This voice does not scare you, it relaxes you. It whispers things like, "You don't need to change. You're fine the way you are. Why push yourself so hard? Life is meant to be easy." And at first, that sounds peaceful. But here is the problem. Growth rarely feels comfortable. Transformation requires pressure, discipline, effort. And the enemy knows that if he can keep you comfortable, you will never reach your full potential. So this voice slowly convinces people to settle, to stay where they are, to avoid challenges that could elevate their life. And over time, something strange begins to happen. A person's dreams start becoming smaller, their ambitions begin to fade, their hunger for improvement slowly disappears, not because they couldn't grow, but because they were convinced they didn't need to. This is why some people wake up years later feeling lost. They look around and realize they stayed in the same place while time kept moving forward. And deep down, they know something inside them was meant for more, but they listened to the voice that said, "Later, not now. You have plenty of time." That voice has stolen more destinies than most people realize, because the truth is, time is one of the most valuable things you have. And once it passes, you can never get it back. The enemy understands this very well. That is why he doesn't always try to destroy you quickly. Sometimes, he simply delays you long enough that your purpose never gets fulfilled. But now we are about to reveal something extremely important, because there is a moment when the devil's voice becomes the loudest. A moment when people are most vulnerable. And if you can recognize that moment, you can protect yourself from one of the most dangerous traps of all. The voice that speaks loudest when you're weak. There's a moment in every person's life when the devil's voice becomes much louder than usual. Not when everything is going well, not when you feel strong, but when you are tired, hurt, lonely, or emotionally broken. That is when the whisper becomes extremely persuasive, because pain weakens the mind, and the enemy knows this. Think about the times in your life when you made decisions you later regretted. Most of those moments did not happen when you were thinking clearly. They happened when you were overwhelmed, when someone hurt you, when life disappointed you, when things did not go the way you expected. And suddenly a voice appeared saying, "Forget everything. Do whatever makes you feel better right now. You deserve to escape this pain." At that moment, it feels like relief, but it is actually a trap. Because the devil often uses pain as a doorway into bad decisions, a doorway into destructive habits, a doorway into choices that can change the direction of your life. Many people don't realize this. They think they are just reacting to their emotions. But behind the scenes, something darker is influencing their thoughts. That voice will push you toward things that promise temporary comfort, but leave deeper damage afterward. And once the moment passes, regret usually follows. You look back and ask yourself, "Why did I do that? That's not even who I am." Exactly, because in that moment, you were listening to a voice that was not leading you toward healing. It was leading you toward weakness. This is why self-awareness is so powerful. Because when you recognize that your mind is vulnerable, you can become careful about the thoughts you choose to follow. But there is another way the devil's voice operates, and this one is extremely dangerous, because it doesn't try to make you weak. It tries to make you arrogant, and that has destroyed more people than they realize. The voice that feeds your ego. Most people believe the devil only works through temptation and weakness, but sometimes he works through pride, through ego, through the feeling that you are above everyone else. This voice does not sound negative at all. In fact, it sounds empowering. It whispers things like, "You don't need anyone. You're smarter than them. You already know everything. No one can tell you what to do." At first, it feels like confidence, but real confidence and ego are very different. Confidence builds, ego blinds, and the devil knows that a person who stops listening stops growing. This voice slowly convinces people to reject wisdom, to ignore advice, to believe they are always right. And once someone reaches that point, they become extremely easy to mislead because they stop questioning themselves. History is filled with people who destroyed their own lives because of this voice. Not because they lacked intelligence, not because they lacked opportunity, but because pride closed their eyes. And the devil loves pride, because pride makes people believe they are in control, even when they are walking straight into a trap. You start ignoring warning signs. You start dismissing people who care about you. You start trusting your impulses more than wisdom. And slowly, the fall begins. But there is another voice that is even more subtle than pride. A voice that hides inside everyday distractions. And this one is quietly pulling millions of people away from their purpose right now. The voice that distracts you from your calling. Not every trap looks dangerous. Some traps look like entertainment, distractions, endless noise. And this is one of the most modern ways the devil's voice works today. Because instead of directly pulling people into darkness, it simply keeps them busy enough that they never discover why they were truly created. The voice sounds like this. You can start later. Just scroll a little longer. One more video. One more hour. And suddenly, hours turn into days. Days turn into months. Months turn into years. And the scariest part is, nothing dramatic happened. No big mistake. No obvious destruction. Just slow distraction. And distraction is incredibly powerful because a distracted mind rarely questions where life is going. Many people wake up years later realizing they never built the life they once imagined, not because they were incapable, but because they were constantly distracted. The devil doesn't always need to make you fall. Sometimes he just needs to keep you from moving forward. And the voice of distraction is extremely effective at doing that. It keeps your mind occupied with things that don't truly matter, while the things that do matter get postponed, ignored, forgotten. This is how destinies quietly fade away, not through chaos, but through endless delay. But now we are approaching one of the most important parts of this message, because there is a final trick the devil's voice often uses, a trick that convinces people they are already too far from God to return. And once someone believes that, they stop trying completely. The voice that says, "It's too late for you." There is one lie the devil loves to repeat more than almost anything else. Because if a person believes this lie, they stop trying to change their life. The voice sounds like this. "It's too late for you now. You've gone too far. You've made too many mistakes. God wouldn't want someone like you." This voice usually appears after someone has fallen, after a failure, after a bad decision, after a moment they are deeply ashamed of. And instead of encouraging them to stand up again, the voice pushes them deeper into darkness, reminds them of everything they regret, every wrong choice, every time they messed up, every moment they wish they could erase. And slowly, the person begins to believe something dangerous, that their story is already finished. But here is something extremely important most people don't realize. The devil does not need to keep you in chains if he can convince you to lock the door yourself. And that is exactly what this voice does. It makes people believe that change is impossible, so they stop reaching for it. They stop praying. They stop improving. They stop believing their life can become something better. But the truth is, this voice is one of the biggest lies ever told, because many of the strongest people you see today were once at their lowest point. Many people who are walking in purpose now were once lost. And the moment someone realizes that it is not too late, that is when everything can change. That is when the enemy begins to lose control, because the devil's influence depends on one thing: hopelessness. The moment hope returns, his voice begins to lose its power. The moment hope returns, his voice begins to lose its power. But there is another voice that is even more manipulative than hopelessness. A voice that pretends to be your friend. And many people trust it without question. The voice that pretends to care about you. One of the most deceptive strategies the devil uses is imitation. Instead of sounding evil, this voice tries to sound like it is protecting you, helping you, looking out for you. It whispers things like, "I'm just trying to keep you safe. You shouldn't risk that. What if you fail? What if people judge you?" At first, it sounds like caution, but there is a hidden motive behind it. Fear. Because fear is one of the strongest tools the enemy uses to control people. If he can make you afraid to move forward, you will stay exactly where you are. This voice often appears right before a major opportunity, right before a big decision, right before you step into something that could change your life. And suddenly your mind fills with doubt. What if it goes wrong? What if I embarrass myself? What if I'm not ready? So instead of moving forward, you step back. You play it safe. You stay comfortable. And once again, the devil wins without a fight, because the opportunity passes, the moment disappears, and life continues as if nothing happened. But deep inside, you feel something, a quiet feeling that you were supposed to take that step, that you were supposed to try, that maybe, just maybe, something bigger was waiting on the other side of that fear. This is why recognizing the voice is so important, because once you see the pattern, you begin to understand something powerful. Not every thought deserves your trust. Not every voice in your mind deserves to guide your decisions. And now we are approaching something extremely important, because after hearing all of these voices, there is one final truth that most people need to understand, and it might completely change the way you think about your mind forever. The moment you realize the truth, there comes a moment in a person's life when everything suddenly becomes clear. A moment when they begin to notice something they never paid attention to before. The voices, the patterns, the subtle influence behind certain thoughts. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You begin recognizing when a thought is trying to weaken you, when a thought is trying to delay you, when a thought is trying to pull you away from your purpose. That awareness is powerful, because the devil's voice is strongest when it is hidden. But the moment it is exposed, it starts losing its power. Imagine realizing that many of the thoughts that held you back were never meant to help you. They were meant to stop you. Imagine recognizing when fear is trying to control you, when doubt is trying to silence you, when distraction is trying to steal your time. That realization can change everything, because once a person becomes aware, they begin making different choices. They start questioning the thoughts that once controlled them. They start choosing discipline over comfort, truth over lies, purpose over distraction. And that is the moment the battle begins to shift. Not because the voices disappear, but because now you know which voice not to follow. And when someone reaches that level of awareness, something powerful begins to happen inside them. Strength, clarity, direction. But there is still one final message that must be understood, because knowing what the devil's voice sounds like is only half of the story. The real transformation happens when you learn how to respond to it, how to silence the devil's voice. Now that you know what the voice of the devil sounds like, there is one question that matters more than anything else. How do you stop listening to it? Because the truth is, the voice may not disappear overnight. Those whispers will still try to show up. Doubt will still knock on the door of your mind. Fear will still attempt to slow you down. Distraction will still try to steal your time. But here is the powerful truth most people never realize. You don't need to control every voice that appears in your mind. You only need to control which one you obey. This is where real strength begins. The moment you start recognizing the difference between a voice that weakens you and a voice that pushes you toward growth. Because the devil's voice always follows a pattern. It makes you smaller. It makes you afraid. It makes you delay. It makes you doubt who you are meant to become. But the voice of truth does the opposite. It challenges you. It strengthens you. It pushes you to rise when things are difficult. When you feel the voice telling you to quit, that is the moment to stand firm. When the voice tells you it's too late, that is the moment to move forward anyway. When the voice says you're not enough, that is the moment to remember that growth is a journey, not a starting point. Most people wait until they feel confident before they act. But the strongest people act even when doubt is whispering, because they understand something important. Voices lose power when they are ignored. Every time you choose discipline over temptation, that voice becomes weaker. Every time you choose courage over fear, that voice becomes quieter. Every time you choose purpose over distraction, you take back control of your mind. And slowly, something begins to change inside you. Your thoughts become clearer. Your direction becomes stronger. Your confidence begins to grow. Not because the battle disappeared, but because you stopped letting the wrong voice lead your life. And that is the turning point. The moment a person stops being controlled by whispers and starts walking with intention. But before this message ends, there is something you need to remember. Because the battle for your mind is one of the most important battles you will ever face. And once you understand that, you will never take your thoughts lightly again. The truth. Most people realize too late. Right now, somewhere in the world, millions of people are listening to voices they don't even recognize. Voices telling them to give up. Voices telling them to stay small. Voices telling them to delay their purpose. And many of them will never realize what was happening. But you are different now. Because once you hear the patterns, once you understand how the voice works, you begin to see it clearly. The whisper that tries to pull you away from your purpose. The thought that tries to weaken your faith. The distraction that tries to steal your future. And awareness is powerful, because the moment you recognize the voice, you gain the power to reject it. The devil's voice survives through confusion, but clarity destroys confusion. That is why this message matters, because your life is shaped by the voices you follow. Some voices will pull you into darkness, but others will lead you toward growth, strength, and purpose. The question is not whether the voices exist. They always will. The real question is, which voice will you choose to listen to from this moment forward? Because one decision, one moment of awareness, can completely change the direction of your life. And many people watching this right now are standing at that exact moment. A moment where you can continue listening to the whispers that limit you, or you can rise above them, recognize them, silence them, and move toward the life you were meant to live. So the next time you hear a voice telling you to quit, remember this message, because now you know exactly what the voice of the devil sounds like.